This is CBC Here and Now.
From chaotic Afghanistan to peaceful Canada, a Newfoundland man is trying to help an Afghan interpreter escape the Taliban.
They said you're working with high-ranking Canadians, therefore you are a target, you should be killed.
Coming up on Here and Now.
The debate about red alerts and a shortage of ambulances continues, and despite a meeting today, no settlement seems within reach. That's coming up.
I'm angry. I'm really angry. I spend more time being angry than I like to admit.
It's almost like a pendulum between rage and hopelessness. Because every single morning we wake up in this fourth wave, we know that this was a preventable wave.
Reaction tonight from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians in Alberta as that province declares a health emergency.
And brings in an assortment of strict lockdown measures. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain. He worked with the Canadian military as an interpreter, and now the Taliban want him dead.
In peaceful Maddox Cove, a retired brigadier general is pushing Canada to rescue his former colleague. Here and Now's Mark Quinn has our top story.
Afghanistan is still in crisis. Hundreds of thousands of people are scrambling to get out since the Taliban took power. A few weeks ago, the Kabul airport was a scene of desperation as the last flights left. Afghan residents who helped coalition forces like Canada are still desperate to escape, and one of them is this man.
I'm not staying in one location more than 2 or 3 hours. 3 times they came to my house.
We're calling him Joe and hiding his face. His life is in danger. He knows the Taliban wants him dead. They tried before, back in 2010.
The same time like now, they attack on me. They shot a bullet on my right leg.
The Taliban tried to do a target assassination. They shot him in his vehicle en route home. He was wounded in the legs. He survived, was hospitalized, dealt with that wound, and in fact the Taliban called him about a week later, and he asked them, why did you do this? And quite simply, they said, you're working with high-ranking Canadians, therefore you are a target, you should be killed.
James Camsell was a Canadian Forces Brigadier General in Afghanistan in 2008 and 2009. Back then, Joe was his interpreter. They worked side by side, and now they've reconnected. Camsell's in peaceful Maddox Cove.
Hello, my friend.
And Joe's somewhere in chaotic Afghanistan.
3 times I changed my house and I put all my SIM cards in garbage. Turn off all the phones. I got a new phone number and I'm not staying in one location.
Camsell says interpreters like Joe were indispensable to the Canadian military in Afghanistan.
He became a close friend of mine. Without interpreters in Afghanistan, for the Canadian Armed Forces, operations wouldn't occur because they know the local customs and obviously the language issue. You're mentoring. I was mentoring an Afghanistan major and his staff, and none of them had any English. So my interpreter became integral to that process to try to help them develop and do their operations against the Taliban.
Interpreters put themselves and their families in grave danger.
Incredible risk. He was helping what was considered a foreign enemy, so Canada, and that goes for all interpreters.
Now that U.S. and Canadian forces are gone, the Taliban has taken complete control of Afghanistan, and Joe says daily life is becoming increasingly difficult.
They cannot feed themselves. They don't have food, they don't have money for themselves. How they are going to run the government? Everybody is trying to go out from Afghanistan because their families want food, everything, all the facilities from them, but they cannot provide it.
He's running out of money, trying to feed his family, and he's frightened about going to the banks because there's huge lineups, but also the Taliban are guarding the banks and they're IDing individuals and so on. So he's afraid if they ID who he is, that he could potentially be killed.
Camsell works with a group that advocates for people who helped Canadians in Afghanistan. It's called the Veterans Transition Network, and they're helping people in Afghanistan apply to immigrate to Canada.
We have a moral obligation, I believe, to him. These people put their, he shed blood for this country. He was wounded. Other interpreters, journalists have been killed over there.
So I am trying to save myself until the Canadians decide about me and how they can bring me to Canada.
Already, Canada has taken in more than 3,700 people from Afghanistan. Immigration officials say they understand the urgency of the situation and they plan to take in thousands more. But Kamsel says Canada must help Joe quickly before the Taliban finds him again. Mark Quinn, CBC News, Maddox Cove, Newfoundland.
Well, new details tonight about who's able to get a third vaccine, and it's not just people who are immunocompromised. This as new numbers show that vaccination rates vary depending on where you are in the province. Here now's Peter Cowan is standing by to break it all down. So Peter, let's start with those third doses and who should get them.
Yeah, we knew that severely or moderately immunocompromised people would be able to get a third dose, but today we learned there's another group, travelers. If you received mixed vaccines and have to travel for essential reasons, the province will give you a third dose. So you'll have two of the same, but it's not for every traveler. So let's take a look at the details. So if you work outside of Canada, or you need to have a medical procedure out of the country, or you go to school internationally, you can get a third shot. But you're going to have to prove it. You'll need a letter from your company, doctor, or school in order to get it. You can book it as online. You just need to select a second shot, but you have to make sure you wait 28 days from after your second shot.
Okay, so we know that 78.6% of eligible people in this province are now fully vaccinated, but that number doesn't reflect every part of the province. So what have you learned on that front?
Well, yeah, we saw with the outbreak in the Roddickton area, public health pointing to lower vaccination rates there. So I asked for a breakdown. Where are the rates higher? Where are the rates lower? And especially those lower places are important because they're more vulnerable to an outbreak. So let's take a look at which areas are the most and least fully vaccinated. The St. John's area has the highest rate with 80% fully vaccinated. Almost 90% have at least one dose. Overall, the Avalon has quite a high rate of vaccination, but it drops in some of the more rural areas. The least vaccinated area of Newfoundland is Notre Dame Bay, so that's Springdale, Triton, Twillingate, with just 2/3 of people there fully vaccinated. It's the only area on the island below 70%. In Labrador, there are some big variations as well. Most of Labrador is looking at around 75% fully vaccinated, but as you can see there, the north coast of Labrador, just 58% of people are fully vaccinated. That's the lowest in the province. Even amongst different age groups, you're seeing variations. People in their 70s are the most vaccinated. The least vaccinated group, it's 20 to 40-year-olds. In the St. John's area, 69% of that age group are fully vaccinated. But when you look at Notre Dame Bay, just 45%. Other areas of Newfoundland, 50 to 60%. But back to the north coast of Labrador, 51% of that age group is fully vaccinated. So now one of the big questions for public health is going to be how to reach those unvaccinated people right across the province. One thing they're doing is new pop-up clinics. Eastern Health, for example, today announcing that it's going to be at the Avalon Mall this weekend for people who still require a first or second shot. Anthony?
Thank you, Peter. It's Peter Cowan live in our newsroom. Now, Alberta is under a state of public health emergency. That province has brought in strict and sweeping measures, and yesterday, an apology from the Premier.
Believed that we could prudently move away from addressing COVID as a pandemic and towards an endemic. It is now clear that we were wrong, and for that, I apologize.
Well, Jason Kenney later qualified that apology, saying he is not sorry for the controversial decision to lift public health restrictions back in July. Alberta has more than 18,000 cases, the most of any province, and that province's healthcare system, experts say, is just days away from collapse.
Well, Alberta has a deep connection with this province. We're connected through jobs and through families. So how does this latest news out of Alberta hit Newfoundlanders and Labradorians living here? Here now's Terry Roberts has the story of two friends from Canning's Cove who are now caught in Alberta's state of emergency.
The COVID crisis in Alberta has that province rattled. And that includes thousands of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians living in the province.
It's almost like a pendulum between rage and hopelessness.
I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm very upset by the decisions made by our political leaders.
Joanne Greening calls Grand Prairie home, where there are hundreds of COVID cases, low vaccination rates. It all makes her mad.
There's a real big population of anti-vaxxers in Alberta. It's really upsetting. I mean, they protest on the streets. It's really upsetting. It's a hard time to live here, to be honest. And I'm quite jealous of Newfoundland and how they've handled the pandemic versus how we've handled this pandemic here in Alberta.
It is now clear that we were wrong.
She places the blame on this man, Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, and is not comforted by his recent apology.
Too little, too late, buddy. Too little, too late. We could have done a lot more to be on top of this. Like, I look at other provinces, and especially Newfoundland, and how much was done to prepare for the pandemic, to stay ahead, of this terrible, terrible virus.
Greening's lifelong friend says Kenney should resign.
If you have to come in front of the Alberta population and you have to apologize for opening the province way too early, when you knew it was the wrong thing to do, when you knew that the outcome would be, an explosion of the Delta variant, I think that's where blame needs to lie.
Alberta now has the most active COVID cases in the country, and critics say this situation was predictable when the government decided to lift public health measures this summer.
Last night, the Premier was on TV begging for healthcare workers from other provinces to come here and bail us out of a fourth wave that he created, because he wanted to flip pancakes at the Calgary Stampede.
I have a lot of friends in the healthcare, industry here, and they're tired, they're worn out. And then you have, other people that, are saying this COVID is a farce and it's not real and this vaccine doesn't work. It's tough. It's really hard.
Alberta has been good to this family. Now Greening longs for her home province and plans to return in a few years.
This political environment here in Alberta it doesn't represent who I am and what I stand for anymore.
Life was good in Alberta.
The Lee family is hoping they do not require medical care during this latest crisis. And Krista Lee is happy that her aging parents are not living in Alberta.
I am so grateful that they are living in Newfoundland and Labrador right now and not Alberta, because I'm not sure that they would get the care that they would need if they were to become ill.
More than 70% of Albertans are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Greening and Lee say that's proof most people trust the medical experts. But they say it's that small minority of naysayers and COVID deniers that are putting everyone at risk. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
All right, so it was a little bit of a damp day today, basically almost all across the province. There was a little bit of precipitation almost everywhere. Maybe northern Labrador you didn't see a little, but for the most of the province there was a little bit of drizzle, a little bit of rain, and some places even a little bit of thunder. I saw a great video on social media from Trapassi where there's a little bit of thunder, but the weather brings the rain, and then the weatherman brings the sun. And look at this. This is what we're looking like tomorrow. And it's not just here. All across the island, look at all those sun icons. I'm taking full credit for that. And it's not just on the island. Look up in Labrador. Now, Nain, you're looking at a little bit of rain, but that's a sun shower. So it's looking like a beautiful day tomorrow. So take a look at those temperatures, because they're coming on Friday, but probably not Saturday. And I'll tell you more about that coming up.
Thanks, Jeremy. Well, a meeting today between frustrated paramedics and the health minister is being described as emotional and difficult. Last week, NAPE, the union representing the paramedics, identified issues that it says need to be fixed to address red alerts and delays offloading patients. Well, today, 4 paramedics met with John Hagee. As Henrika Wilhelm tells us, both sides feel differently about how the meeting went.
The reports of red alerts don't seem to stop. Today, Health Minister Hagee said he put an offer on the table, a group of senior civil servants which meets and identifies gaps in the emergency healthcare system.
Today, difficult as it was kind of a reality, a kind of ground truthing check, where you actually had paramedics in front of you telling you what their challenges had been 2 weeks ago or a month ago or some major event in their professional life that they were concerned about. And you don't get that unfiltered from the reports.
NAPE President Jerry Earl and the paramedics weren't happy with neither the suggestion nor the meeting, but Earl said he won't turn the offer down.
The paramedics are extremely frustrated. Like, I just spoke to these paramedics, some that said on their call, they're extremely frustrated, say, I got to go tomorrow morning when I report the shift. Can you imagine? They're going to report the shift tomorrow morning and said, what committed the meeting? Another meeting. They want to see concrete solutions, and the minister flippantly says to them, It's your job to give us the solutions. Sorry, Minister, that's your job.
Haggie said some concerns will be addressed immediately, like facilitating the transfer of paramedics' credentials from other provinces, but that the group would be able to look into why some things, like the newly created offload delay room, aren't working for paramedics.
There is a holding room. It's got a capacity of up to 6. In addition to that, there's then what we call the buddy system, where one crew can stay behind and look after up to another 6 individuals, and the other rigs can be freed up. I don't know why it's not working, because on paper it should.
Earl said he knows why.
What he's talking about is you're sticking 6 people in a room that the paramedics have brought in from the community, in a room with a single paramedic. If they go beyond 6, they're going to stick them in another room with another single paramedic. Does that make any sense?
Earl says paramedics are mentally drained.
The symptoms are there, the diagnosis is clear, but we have a physician failing to treat.
Haggie said he doesn't want to speak of a crisis and that whoever is in need of an ambulance will get it. Earl said constant red alerts speak a different language and said that immediate solutions are needed for issues. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
Gas prices went up again in the province for the 3rd straight week, and prices have hit a new all-time high. We'll look at St. John's first. The maximum price for self-serve is $1.55 per litre. The last record was set in July, a few tenths of a cent less than that. Prices are higher elsewhere in the province. In central Newfoundland, the maximum price is $1.57 a litre, and in southern Labrador, prices are set at $1.67 per litre.
Well, a new series from the Royal Canadian Mint has a local connection. Its first coin was designed by an artist from Rigolette. The series, called Generations, is meant to celebrate legends and myths from Indigenous people in Canada. Jason Skowick was approached by the Mint to submit a design, and he chose to depict the sea goddess Sedna. He says there are several different versions of Sedna's story, but in the end, she's always responsible for providing sea mammals to the water. 5,000 of the silver coins have been minted. Well, we've all felt cabin fever during this pandemic, but for this adventure seeker, cabin fever takes on a whole new meaning. We'll tell you all about his solo flight from BC to St. John's coming up. Time for a look at the weather. Jeremy is here, and your forecast earlier, how nice it's going to be tomorrow. It's great. A bit wet and cold today, though.
It was pretty terrible today, but you know, that's part of September in Newfoundland.
Ups and downs.
Now, but it is going to be nicer tomorrow, so we'll just jump right into that real quick, and you can see this is what it currently is. Whoops. Now, this is what the highs for today were like. So as you can see, we're sitting at about 19 in St. John's, 12 in Labrador City. Nain, you're sitting at around 10. Blanc-Sablon, you're sitting at around 16 degrees. So it wasn't a bad day, all in all, but there was a fair bit of rain that fell. Not a lot of accumulation, but enough rain to make you damp. And I noticed, as I said earlier before the commercial break, that there were some thunderstorms that happened. Oh my goodness gracious. So those thunderstorms you would have seen, you could have heard some rumbling, on the southern shore. And I think that we might even see more tonight, but we'll jump right into that. We're going to take a quick look now at the future tracker to see. I lied to you. We're going to look at the temperatures tonight. So it's sitting at around 10 degrees. Now you can see I was able to get the thunderstorm icon in. So there is a chance that you'll see some thunderstorms here. It'll be St. John's, probably maybe Bay Roberts, Placentia, Ferryland. You might see or hear, more than likely, some thunderstorms tonight. But there won't be a lot of accumulation. Now, there is also a risk of frost for St. John's. So my mediocre meteorological know-how, I have no idea how to explain that. Anyway, so you're looking at about 5. There'll be a little bit of rain in Marystown at 5 degrees. It'll be clear in Port aux Basques, clear pretty much across central, the west coast, southwest coast, and up to St. Anthony. And as we move up into Labrador, there is a little bit of rain that's going to fall in Cartwright and in Happy Valley Goose Bay, but otherwise, it's looking like a pretty nice evening. Now, you're going to want to keep an eye on the winds, especially up here. Here, you're looking at 50 to kilometer overnight. And that should die down later in the day tomorrow, but probably not until tomorrow afternoon, but we'll get into that in a second. Now, my dad says I got to keep looking at the front because I keep looking at the side, and I'm trying to do that. It's just there's a lot to remember, and there's not a lot up here, but we're getting there. So this is the future tracker right here. As you can see, this is why it's going to be clear tomorrow. This is why a lot of parts of the province are going to see sun, because as you step back, you can barely see any green. You'll see some fog patches, so places could see fog starting tonight, rolling in tomorrow, but it should burn off for our sunny Friday. Let me just roll that so you can see it. Nah, I'm on fire today. So this is what we're looking at tomorrow. Excuse me. So we're looking at 21 degrees in St. John's, 17 in Ferryland, 17 in Placentia, and it's just sunny all the way across. And as we keep going, it's just going to keep going. Oh, my button's not working. There she goes. So as you can see, it's sunny all across central, 20 degrees, and then that'll move all across into the Humber Valley. It gets a little bit chillier there, Stephenville, Grossmoor, and in Corner Brook, but the sun is still shining. So now as we move up to Labrador, Mary's Harbour and Cartwright will sit at 20 degrees, which will be a great day up in Labrador in the Big Land. Now the only slight issue in this will be in Nain, and it's not even an issue, but the wind speeds right there in Nain, you can see it'd be 30 to 50 kilometers an hour, and then in western Labrador you'll see 50 to 70 kilometers an hour as well. Now that could last until later in the afternoon, but it will be sunny. It will be warm. Nain will see a few showers throughout the morning and maybe into the early afternoon hours, but for the most part, it's looking like a pretty good Friday, so I will take credit for that. So this is the future tracker because this is where the good news ends. So as you can see, as the green moves across Labrador, there will be rain coming in parts on Saturday and into Saturday night, and it's going to make its way across, as you can see, there's going to make its way across Labrador, and then it's going to come into Newfoundland as well. We're just going to run that again so you can see. So this is the rain. This is a system that's going to come in on Saturday, and it'll bring a little bit of rain on Saturday and into Saturday night. But all in all, it's shaping up to be a pretty good day, shaping up to be a pretty good weekend. You're going to see a nice day on Friday. You'll probably see rain on Saturday and probably a nice day on Sunday. But we'll have all of those details. You can take another look at the current temperatures if you like, but I'll have all of your long-range forecast details coming up later in the show.
Some MUN students say this is a legit protest poster, but the president of MUN, seen here, says it violates respect in the workplace rules and has to go. That's coming up. Welcome back to Here and Now. Well, these posters of the president of Memorial University have caused a bit of an argument on campus. Joining me now is Matt Barter. He's the person who designed these posters. So Matt, what was the point you're trying to make with these?
The point of the posters were to bring attention to the doubling of tuition fees. It's an issue that the president don't want to talk about, and that she didn't want to leave it alone, and she didn't want to move on from it. But it's still an issue for many students.
Now, you went to a public event, and you kind of ambushed her.
So many students at MUN upset at the tuition doubling. Some students have even gone as far as to ask for your resignation.
So you obviously feel very strongly about that. Why'd you do that?
Yes, the reason why Dr. Timmons gave a presentation, and there was an opportunity for a reflection period. So I asked 2 questions about tuition, and about her removal of the posters because she would not respond to media requests as to why she took them down. It wasn't until yesterday that she gave us the reason that she took them down, because she said it does not honor the respectful workplace policy.
Okay, so she has taken the position that these posters, which say resign, are a violation of the respectful workplace policy. What do you make of that?
Yes, so I disagree with that. I think that it's important for a university to have freedom of speech and debate, because university is about learning, and I think that the president should not be immune from criticism, and that the president should not take that they should not be influenced by criticism and by opposing views.
Now, I just want to ask you to be clear, is this a one-man show, you versus Memorial, because, or are other students actually taking up this cause you've started?
Yeah, so I'm the one who initiated it, but there's been so many students to support it. There's an enormous amount of support among the student body for this. There's so many students with pictures of the posters on social media channels and stuff.
Well, Matt Barter, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's see if we can get some answers from Vianne Timmins. So Vianne Timmins, why was it necessary to take these posters down?
I felt it was necessary to take these posters down because we have a respectful workplace policy. And if there were posters up for any faculty, staff, or students, I would have them taken down. I do not want anyone to walk on our campus and feel targeted or unwelcome, and that's really important to us as a community.
But, you know, you're an experienced academic and a president of a university. Students protest all kinds of things. I mean, I looked at the picture. It's not a bad picture. It just says resign, say no to tuition hikes. I mean, where does freedom of speech and the respectful workplace policy clash on this?
So I really want our students to protest. They should protest. They should protest many issues, but there's different ways to protest and not to personalize it. And as a woman who's been a target of a lot of attacks, as has our new provost, I felt it was time to make a statement that personal attacks are not acceptable on this campus. We have a campus that we can have debates that are respectful, that we can have disagreements and dialogues that are respectful, and not personalize them. So that is why I made this position.
But when you look at that poster, how do you possibly interpret a personal attack? It's just saying you should resign because you raised tuition.
So the university raised tuition,
right.
The community raised tuition, the university, that's a really important distinction. I was a spokesperson for it, and so a personal attack is a personal attack. And you know, it was really, I kept thinking if it was a faculty member's poster up there, and when you walk onto campus, and I will say when I saw them, my stomach turned. I have a daughter with unique learning needs. She saw them. I had to work with her and help her understand and process this, you know. There are students that called me, faculty that called me, and staff called me really upset about this. So I took a stand. This is a place of respect where everyone's welcomed, it's inclusive, and we need to be able to have respectful differences without personalizing attacks. And in the world we're living in today, that's a huge issue. And as a university, we are a place of all other places to role model that.
But, you know, instead of saying it's a workplace issue, aren't you possibly missing a teachable moment here where you can once again explain why tuition increases have to happen, or explain that whether it's Vianne Timmins or whoever was in this position, this is going to happen anyway. I mean, why not educate instead of, you know, basically censoring this?
Well, there was no censoring done. Students can protest, and I encourage them to protest. And it is a teachable moment. It's a teachable moment about how to have differences. It's a teachable moment about how to have a respectful conversation when you have differing views. That was a teachable moment, and that's the moment I took.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
They say the sky is the limit, and one adventure seeker from Ontario certainly pushed that limit when he flew in a plane from BC to St. John's in a 1961 Piper plane all by himself. Joining me now is Logan Daly-Dursum. I would say what brings you to St. John's, but we know exactly what brought you to St. John's, this amazing plane. So why don't you start by telling us about your journey here?
Yeah, of course. So I bought the plane in Langley, BC. Basically stopped working, bought the plane on a loan, and I flew out to Tofino to start on the coast.
In BC?
Yeah, in BC. And I wanted to go coast to coast. It was my big dream and adventure, and I just accomplished that this week.
So tell us about your dream. Tell us about this adventure you're on. Where did this idea come from?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I really wanted to do something exciting, something unique and adventurous. and this is the thing I could think about. I really wanted to inspire other people to adventure. It's not about planes, like I'm not a professional pilot by any means. It's more about just everybody getting out there if they feel stuck and doing something that excites them.
Lots of people have dreams that they want to fulfill, but getting to the doing part can sometimes be a challenge. How did you get from dreaming to actually doing?
I completely agree, and that's a big part of this. I've been scared a lot of the time, and you just realize life is short. I don't think I'm old, but I'm turning 30 here in December, and I figured you have to live now while you're healthy and go out and do something exciting while you can.
And you're up there all by yourself. What's that like?
Yeah, there's something about a solo adventure. It lets you think, it lets you really try and find, I don't want to say find yourself exactly, but it's exciting, and it helps, I think, meeting people, strangers, and I've met a lot of great people.
So you're documenting this through social media, through TikTok, and posting videos. Can you talk about that and your posts and the response that you've been getting?
Yeah, of course. So I started a TikTok account when I started the adventure, and it was pretty slow at first, actually about to halfway. And then when I just restarted from the second half from Ontario to here, just great response. There's some great people out there. Like we call ourselves like Team Whiskey, because the plane has registration with the name Whiskey in it. So Team Whiskey and I, they feel like they're really with me on the adventure, so it doesn't always make it feel like I'm doing it solo.
And this is a beautiful plane from 1961. Yeah. Tell us more about it.
It's 1961, just 2 seats, only goes about 90 miles an hour. The speed gauge is in miles an hour, so it's like a car in the sky, basically, a vintage car.
And when you stop at the different locations, what then?
What then? Yeah, so to make the adventure extra exciting, I camped quite a few of the nights, 13 of the nights about, and that's right at the airport. So you just have to ask it out to be small enough, and I have my tent and sleeping bag and stuff in the back and some camping food, so that, yeah, that makes it really fun.
So you just pitch your tent next to your plane at the airport?
Yeah, I have pictures of like rural Saskatchewan is in Lucky Lake, middle of nowhere prairies, and that's exactly what I wanted, and it was really fun.
So what's your experience been like in St. John's?
People have just been so generous. I have a place to stay. This hangar as well is a place I can store my plane, and somebody actually from my TikTok account through social media, Jason, who just lives outside of town, I haven't even met him. He got his wife to give me the key, but the car I'm using this week is just a local, following my adventure. He loves adventure, and yeah, he lent me his car for the week.
Oh, wow. Where are you staying?
Yeah, a gentleman who owns another plane in the hangar here, he's put me up, actually in his own house with his wife and kid for a while, and now he has a cottage, so I have the keys for that.
So you land here, you get a car, and you get a place to stay, just like that.
Yeah, Newfoundland, and the people on TikTok from St. John's, just everyone's offering like anything super nice.
So you're here in St. John's. What's next for you now?
Next, ideally, I'd like to write a book. I'd like to publish a book, rather. I'm sure I can write it. I'd like to find an agent and publish it. So if you hear of anybody, let me know, because I have a lot of stories, and it's a lot to do with just the people I've met, about lessons of adventuring. And it's not so much for, like, of course, I'd love pilots to read it, but it's just for anyone who feels stuck or just wants to get out there and adventure.
Well, you know, I would love to see the inside of the plane. Would you mind giving me a little bit of a tour?
Of course, we can go. It's just made of fabric, so it moves around here.
It looks really squishy and cozy, really tight quarters though.
Yeah, 60s or 70s vibes here.
So Logan, someone like you, an adventure seeker, must have some kind of philosophy on life. What would your philosophy be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say we only live this one time, and you're only healthy for so long, and it's just important that while you can, you go out and do that thing that really excites you. Do it now while you can. Adventure now.
All right, words to live by. Logan, thank you so much for this,
yeah,
and good luck.
Thanks.
Land and Sea is making a fresh start this fall with a brand new time slot. Beginning this Sunday, we'll be seen at 1:30 on the island, 1 o'clock in most of Labrador. And wait for it, there are new shows coming beginning October 31st, our Halloween treat to you.
A former St. John City Councillor says you should vote for affordable housing even if you can comfortably afford your own home.
Here and Now teamed up with Happy City St. John's to explore some of the key issues in the city's municipal election. Tonight, Hope Jameson explains why the issue of affordable housing should be a priority for everyone.
Residents should be concerned about housing in this election regardless of their housing needs, because cities need people and people need homes. Hi, I'm Hope Jameson, and an issue you should pay attention to in the St. John's election is housing. The city's housing needs assessment in 2019 showed that there are 14,000 plus residents living in St. John's in some level of housing inaffordability or inadequacy. That's a significant portion of the population of our city. That's more than 10% of the people living in St. John's are in some level of housing need. The city has a number of ways that it's involved in housing, and that impacts residents whether or not they have housing needs specifically in their lives, in the sense that not only is the city a landlord providing affordable housing, the city also decides land use, and the way that the city decides land use affects affordability. So allowing things like infill development or subsidiary apartments increases density, providing places for people to live at lower cost of servicing. Lower cost of servicing means less taxes overall, so it impacts everyone's affordability and quality of life. It does seem pretty straightforward when you think about it that way, but one major issue is NIMBYism and objection to increased density in residential areas. So the city has a long history of decades of suburban expansion, emphasis on single-family homes, and there are a lot of misconceptions about who lives in rental apartments, basement apartments, who lives in subsidized housing, and so there's often a lot of pushback on increases in density. If we continue to object to infill development, then the city will continue to sprawl, servicing costs will continue to go up, adding new subdivisions adds increased costs for roads maintenance, snow clearing, all of these. So if you're concerned about your property taxes, you should support the development of affordable housing. So if a candidate comes to my door, the first thing I'm asking is if they support densification in the urban core. And I call on everyone who's running for city council to consider how they will respond to NIMBYism when it arises, because it will. Those are all things that I want to know from candidates who ask for my vote.
As the worldwide pandemic passes the year-and-a-half mark, there is much talk about a shortage of healthcare professionals. And in this country, several provinces need more help from nurses in their provinces. And one example, like Newfoundland and Labrador, is Quebec, where the province says it now needs 4,000 more nurses.
It's one thing for hospitals to have a certain number of beds, but you need the trained and skilled people who actually administer the care to the patients in those beds. Without that, then you have an increasing burden on the people who are left and becomes a bit of a domino effect. So this is really something that has to be tackled now, not only now in the very short term, but we need long-term planning, because you can't just conjure up new trained health professionals instantaneously. That takes months and years.
Now, the problem may be most acute in Alberta right now as it deals with the fourth wave of the pandemic, as we reported on earlier. Alberta Health Services is asking other provinces now if they can take ICU patients who need care, or perhaps spare staff who can work in intensive care units.
More now on that developing situation in Alberta. At this rate, the province is just 10 days away from running out of intensive care beds that are desperately needed. CBC's Paige Parsons has more on yesterday's decision to declare a health emergency.
It is now clear that we were wrong, and for that, I apologize.
After weeks of inaction, Premier Jason Kenney has reversed course, apologizing for telling Albertans earlier that the COVID pandemic is now endemic. Months after declaring Alberta open for good, an announcement of sweeping new COVID-19 measures, including a proof of vaccination system, which he previously promised not to do.
With unvaccinated patients overwhelming our hospitals, this is now the only responsible choice that we have.
With hospitals days away from running out of staffed intensive care beds, healthcare workers are being briefed on a triage process to decide who gets care if there isn't space for everyone.
Yesterday, we reached 270 patients in ICU. That is the highest number of ICU patients that we have ever seen at any time during the pandemic or ever in our provincialized healthcare system.
Yu says they're reaching out to other provinces to see if they have space in ICUs for sick Albertans or if they can send healthcare workers to help. Alberta reached this breaking point despite healthcare workers and experts loudly calling on the province to intervene. Now, some say the measures announced last night come too late.
Even if we apply all of these measures, it's going to take 2 weeks for us to see these numbers start to plateau. Meanwhile, our intensive care unit is full. It is fuller than it has ever been. And it is full of young people who are literally dying as a result of this.
Markland isn't the only one upset new measures took this long.
It's about time. I think we're finally going in the right direction.
Too little, too late almost. You know, I'm kind of surprised that the government's been missing as cases have gone up.
Premier Jason Kenney was asked if anyone will face consequences for the decisions that have put Alberta into such a dire situation, including if he will resign.
I frankly don't think we were wrong to lift public health restrictions.
Kenney says now is not the time for politics. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
And just a note on that story, Premier Andrew Furey tweeted out not too long ago that the province of Newfoundland and Labrador and Alberta have close ties, and he says that he spoke with Premier Jason Kenney today and plans to offer any support that we can provide in their battle against COVID-19, and he says we are all united. Well, with just days to go before the election, party leaders are concentrating on ridings that are seen as tight races in the eastern half of the country. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is in southern Ontario, where he was trying to promote his party's housing plan, but he ended up talking about the pandemic and what he calls the failure of leadership.
Well, there's no question that Mr. Kenney is to blame here and that his leadership has been horrible. But it doesn't also dismiss the fact that Mr. Trudeau called an election while the fourth wave was hitting hard, while everyone knew that it was going to hit.
Singh told reporters he would send in the military to help in Alberta. He also addressed the New Democrats' climate policy, but he didn't provide any further specifics, and he would not commit to scrapping the Trans Mountain pipeline expansion.
The choices that leaders make in a crisis matter. Half measures won't do to fight this pandemic.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau wasn't directly critical of Alberta's premier, but he did attack Erin O'Toole's approach to the pandemic. Trudeau pledged federal help for Alberta at a campaign stop in Montreal. The Liberal leader is concentrating his campaign in Quebec.
Mr. Trudeau called an election that's costing us $600 million rather than keeping the Delta variant from spreading, rather than actually working together.
In the Maritimes, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole laid the blame for the fourth wave of COVID and the problems in Alberta squarely on Justin Trudeau. O'Toole did not comment directly on Alberta's handling of the pandemic. Time now for a look at the long range, and the weekend is almost here. Tomorrow's going to be beautiful as we head into the weekend, but then
it's going to be not so beautiful. It's kind of, yeah, I guess it's like a reverse butterfly. So it's going to go, I don't even know where I was going with that. I'm just going to walk this way. All right, so that was terrible. So, you know, sometimes the jokes land, most times they don't. So this is what we're looking at with the future tracker. Like I was just trying to tell Carolyn, it's going to be nice in parts of the province on Friday, but then the system is going to move across Labrador, and you can see it there in western, southwestern Newfoundland, and that's Saturday morning. So you're going to see the rain start then, and then it's just going to move its way across Labrador, as you can see, and it's going to stick around Corner Brook there until Saturday night. So you could get a bit of precipitation. There's no numbers on this yet because meteorology is always changing, apparently. So we won't know any, but there will be rain coming over the weekend. And then, but the good news is that it's not going to last forever. You know, that's just like Guns N' Roses said, you know, cold November rain, you know, nothing lasts forever. So we're looking at Saturday here. And as you can see on the eastern part of the island, it's going to be sunny. A little bit in central will be sunny. And then as you saw on the future tracker there, those clouds, those rain clouds will come in, and it's just sort of going to be damp everywhere, sort of basically west of Gander. So it's not going to be a great weekend, but the temperatures are pretty warm. Like, look at that. That's 21 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay, so you can't really complain about that at this time of year. So now this is another system that's going to come through then. So as that Saturday system moves on, then Sunday's going to come in. Let me see if I can replay that. Obviously not. So as you can see, I'm trying to see if I can slow this down. So that system is going to move across Labrador, and then it's going to move across the island, and then it's going to come in here. So now so it's going to go up here, and then another system comes in, and that's going to sweep all the way across, meaning that there's going to be a fair bit of rain. Now again, there's no numbers on this, but what you're looking at is this system is going to come in Saturday night. This is the second system, not the first one, Saturday night, and it's going to last until Monday morning. It's probably going to affect, as you can see here, basically, what is that, Bonavista over, Gander over. I'm not really good at reading maps. I wasn't very good at geography. Whoa, Anthony Germain laughing at me in the background. We're team players here. So let's just take a look at the 5-day forecast. So you can see Friday, Saturday here on the eastern part, it's going to be nice, but then that rain is going to come in Sunday, and we don't really know how much is going to come with it. And then as we move into now central and the west, you're not going to have the best of weekends. It's going to be warm, but there will be a fair bit of rain there, as you can see. And then as we move up to Labrador, it's going to start nice on Friday, a bit of rain on Saturday, and then Sunday it'll bring it back. And if I can make a second music joke, as the Grammy Award-winning vocalist Meatloaf once said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Now, here's our viewer photo of the day. So this is a beautiful sunset scene that was sent in to us. And this is a sunset at Cobb's Pond in Gander.
Paradise by the dashboard lights.
Oh my God. So many zingers. So many zingers coming around here tonight. Well, we held it together.
That's gorgeous, Roger.
Yes, thank you so much for sending that in.
So if you have photos, you can email them to us. I guess it's nlphotos@cbc.ca.
nlphotos, yeah, at cbc.ca.
I got it right.
Yeah.
One of the few things today, but yes.
You're too hard on yourself.
Totally, you're doing great.
I also don't know what to do with my hands sometimes. You know what I'm talking about? Like, do I hold them here? Do I hold them there? Do I put them in my pocket? I'll figure this TV thing out yet.
What you do with them at this point is wave goodbye, Jeremy. Both if you want.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.